Hello, TwoSetters. How's it going? This is Eddie, and I have a TwoSet school video for you here today. Just me, because Brett is actually in Korea right now and doesn't really have internet. But what I thought I'd do today is try something a little different. So, some of you may know, but I had a private YouTube channel where I just made little kind of educational violin videos for my own private students. And so these videos are done in a way that's very informative, but not so much funny or entertaining. Now, I understand that with TwoSet, our kind of videos and our image has always been to share the fun and the humor and making classical music more relatable. But, you know, I thought for some of you out there that are more thirsty for more in-depth information, I'd share this video out for you. So it's basically 10 of the most common mistakes people make with their left hand on the violin, okay? A lot of good gems in it. Again, probably not delivered in the most entertaining or funny way, but let me know what you think about it. Would you like more of these type of things? Would you prefer us to keep our videos more fun and entertaining? What would you like more of? What would you like less of? We're always wanting to hear from you for feedback. So yeah, let us know, and happy practicing.
Hey, my name is Eddie Chen, and today I'm going to shoot a quick little video about the top 10 common mistakes violinists make with their left hand, okay? So it's just going to be a very brief, very concise video, and think of this as a checklist of 10 things that might be causing you problems in your violin playing. So next time you're playing a passage, if something doesn't really quite feel right, just pull out this checklist and make sure that you're not making any of these mistakes, okay? So here we go. The first mistake or problem that is often encountered is gripping the neck too tightly, okay? So as we all know, there's 3 points of contact when you play the violin on the left hand. There's the kind of inside of your index finger, which is on this side of the neck. There's the thumb, which is on this side, and then there's the finger that is playing the note. Okay, so what often happens is that there'll be tension between these two contact points, or like a squeezing, and this tension is not good. It will make your shifts very clumsy, and it will make your playing tense, and your tone will sound just not very good, or everything will sound tense. So try to be able to find a way where you want them to be touching. I mean, at the higher positions, you don't need this point to be touching, but definitely in first, second, third position, you want both these points to be touching the neck gently, okay? Gently is the key. You don't want it to be not touching, but you don't want to be squeezing. So good way to check or practice is actually to practice with this off the neck. So there is a gap here, just for practice purposes. Or sometimes it's also really good to check while playing to just move your thumb about to make sure it's not locked or rigid. Mistake number 2 is lifting not from the bass joints, but from the middle joint here. So another very common mistake is that we try to pull the finger up, and so really the finger actually changes shape as it lifts. But you want to think more that when you pull up, the motion comes from this bass knuckle, and the shape of the finger remains relatively the same. So the primary motion comes from down here. And another really important aspect to understand is that often we see the creases on our fingers, and we think that our fingers bend there, just as you can see how there's a crease here and our joint bends there, but actually our joint does not bend at this crease, because if you look carefully, our joint bends from this knuckle, which roughly coincides with down here, okay? So don't be fooled by this crease. Your finger doesn't move from this joint, and if you're thinking of playing or pressing from this joint, your fingers will be unnecessarily tense. So again, it's all about removing unnecessary tension to get the most clean and efficient movement. Similar with pressing down. If you're playing, you want your motion to be coming from these base knuckles, alright? Third mistake is tension in the wrist. So crooked, weird looking wrists. Now, to be fair, if we're playing certain chords, sometimes you do need to maneuver your wrist around, but in general, you want your wrist to be in a neutral position, so it's not that way, it's not that way, it's just a nice natural organic line. And similarly, you don't want your wrist to be leaning in or kind of really far back out. Now, I used to suffer from this, so I used to play a bit like that, especially when I try to vibrate, I go back. A lot of beginners, well, their problem is they want to rest their wrist on the rib cage, which is, it's good for practicing certain vibrato exercises, but that's about it. You rarely ever actually want to play the violin with your wrist resting on that. So everything wants to be just nice, organic, neutral position, just like that. And also, you don't want your wrist to be always stuck in one position, which brings me into our next point, which is improper balance of the left hand, okay? So, when we play on the first finger, our weight is back at the fourth. Our weight is back at the first finger, but as we move up to the fourth finger, you want to shift your weight of the entire hand towards you, so the center of gravity leans on the 4. But most people, when they play to the 4, the tension and the weight is back here on the 1, and instead they try to kind of extend to the 4th. So if you ever wonder, if you're ever having troubles reaching with your 3rd and 4th fingers, chances are your weight is too far back. And the quick way to remedy this is to simply, when you play up to the 4th finger, check 3 things. Make sure your wrist slightly comes in, so it's not doing this. You're not pulling back in order to reach, but it comes in to remain straight. Second is to make sure your thumb assists by coming up a bit, so your thumb's not too far back. See, if I have my thumb up, it's much easier to extend up. And the last thing to make sure is that when you play up on the 4th finger, your 1 is relaxed. It's released the tension, because you don't need your 1 to be still stiff and pressing down if you're playing with your 4th finger. Sure, it can rest gently on the string, but it doesn't need to be squeezing. Number 5, the 5th problem, is just in general. This kind of relates to the previous 4 that I've talked about. Just unnecessary tension. In general, if you feel like your left hand sounds clumsy, inefficient, or just the tone isn't very clean, try to see if there's unnecessary tension anywhere. Want to make your movements as efficient as possible. So for example, if you're playing a 1, 2, 3, is your fingers dropping in a very natural way, so you're utilizing natural weight and gravity, or are you squeezing with each finger and failing to release with the ones before? Also, you want to be careful that there's no kind of tension of squeezing this way between the fingers. They should literally, again, just be from the bass joint, drop and lift, drop and lift. So everything, check your fingers, your thumb, your wrist, your elbow, and even your shoulder. Check that everything, there's no unnecessary tension, nothing that's rigid when it doesn't need to be. The 6th problem is we fail to play with the proper frame shape. So frame is a very large topic that I will have to make another video about to explain in detail. But basically, to play in tune, you want to start thinking not just of whatever finger you're playing, but the relationship between that finger and all your other fingers. So if you're playing an E major scale, E, F sharp, G sharp, A, even though you're just playing the 1, you want to have your 2, 3, and 4 set up in a way where they will naturally fall on those 3 notes, F sharp, G sharp, and A. You don't want your fingers to be back here, kind of pull back here, and then you just play the 2nd, and then for the 3rd finger you have to find it, and the 4th finger. That's too inefficient. Instead, you want to have it all set up and learn the frames so it's kind of like a block. In a way, it's just really preparing your fingers beforehand so you know what hand shape and where every finger belongs, not just the finger that you're playing. A quick way that you can practice any scale or passage with proper frame is to simply hold down your 4th finger on an adjacent string. So for example, you hold your 4th finger down whenever you're not using it on an adjacent string. So notice how I keep it down rather than let my hand go. I keep it down. 7th mistake is that your elbow is not aligned when you change strings. So when you go towards the G string, make sure your elbow slightly swings to the right. When you go towards the E string, it swings to the left rather than trying to change everything just within the hand. Similarly, preparing shifts as you go to a higher position, the elbow should come in and slightly to the right, and then as you go down, back down, out and to the left, all in a very smooth, fluid motion. Another very common mistake, especially for beginners, is that we don't press the string fully down to the fingerboard. So if the string is not completely pressed, your finger might feel like it's touching the fingerboard, but there's still a little bit of space between the string and the fingerboard, and that creates unclear type of sound like as opposed to if I fully depress the string, so the string is fully stopped. Compare that to. Hear how the one when the string isn't fully pressed, it sounds weak and whistly. So make sure your finger is fully pressed. But something that comes hand in hand with that is to know when to use kind of active fingers and when to use much kind of softer fingers. So for example, when we fail to press the string fully, often it's because the finger dropping motion isn't strong enough. And this is really important, especially when playing, for example, quick legato slurred passages. To have really active fingers, almost percussive on the fingerboard, so you can hear it dropping and lifting very actively. Otherwise, this will sound. It just doesn't sound, it sounds mumbled. On the other hand, the exception to that rule is if you want very kind of smooth, melodic passages where you don't want the notes to sound 100% clear. So maybe so if you purposefully want a very smooth type of sound, yes, you can get away with that. And in fact, then I would suggest you to not lift your fingers too high up, so you actually keep your frame there. So number 8 would be to be very aware of the actual motion of your dropping and lifting, how high or how low you're dropping, and whether the string is being fully pressed down. Okay. Number 9, a very common one, is not knowing what finger you're shifting on. So with shifts, when you're shifting from one finger to a different finger, you can either shift on the old finger or the new finger, and you can time that with the old bow, the new bow, or in between. Okay, so for example, that example I shifted with the old note, the 1, and I dropped the 3. Conversely, I could go where I shifted with the 3. Now that might sound pretty simple, but what if we were to time that with a bow change? So what if we were to time that with a bow change? Well, here's the thing. If you are shifting with a bow change, then in general, this is the rule. I mean, there are exceptions, but in general, you want to do the shift on the old bow when you're shifting with the old finger. And this is perhaps the more standard, cleaner, technical type shift. So I'm shifting on the old down bow with the first finger. And that way, the shift is not as audible. Now, if you want to shift with the new finger, typically this is more for an expressive type of shift where you want a bit of that schmaltz. So in that case, you want to do the shift on the new bow and not on the old bow, otherwise it will sound weird. And also pay attention that when you're shifting with the old finger, that your third finger, or your new finger, isn't tense during the shift. The shift comes only from the first finger and your hand is very light and there's no unnecessary tension again. And when you've arrived to a new position, again, it's a dropping motion from the bass joint knuckle and not a squeezing one. Similarly, if you're shifting down, you shift with the old finger, and when you get to the new position, you then lift. I mean, shifting is a huge topic that unfortunately I won't be able to cover fully in this short video, but just really pay attention in your checklist. Am I shifting with the right finger? Am I coordinating it with the right bow? And is my shift as little tension and not heavy, like as light as possible with as little unnecessary tension? Because otherwise the shift will sound clumsy and just not good. Also, again, to tie in with number 7, the elbow, make sure you prepare your shifts with your elbow. The last common mistake that I see a lot of the time is timing the left hand with the right hand. And this creates all sorts of clarity issues. But basically what you need to understand is that the note needs to be stopped on the string in the left hand before the bow plays. I have to, in slow motion time, always make sure that before the new note, my left hand is down before the bow even begins. Now this is even more true if you're playing a descending passage, because for example, in a slurred descending passage, it's not actually the finger dropping motion that creates a change of note, but rather it is the lifting of the old finger that creates a change. See how when you go down a note, it's actually lifting the old finger that creates a change, not putting down the new finger. So also make sure you have that in mind. The last thing would be in string crossings. The change of note happens in the bow and not in the left hand. So make sure when you have a string crossing that the new finger is already down, almost as if you are preparing a double stop, but then you make the change of note with your bow. So always making sure the left hand is prepared beforehand so that the clarity is as good as it can be. So there you have it, the top 10 checklist. I want you to write these 10 things down, put them on a piece of paper, and so next time you practice and you're not sure, something feels wrong with the left hand, go through these 10 and make sure that you're not making any of these mistakes. Implement this in your practice, and if you're not used to doing some of these things, that's okay. In that case, I recommend picking just one or two and focusing on them and making sure you incorporate and internalize these technical ideas first so that they become natural, and then move on to the other ones. Don't try to fix all 10 at the same time, because your brain will be overwhelmed and you can't actually then locate what is causing the problem. So just try them one at a time, and hopefully it will help you out a lot. So thank you very much for listening and watching. Until next time, happy practicing.